There's this myth that once you're over 40, it's impossible to learn a language. But as someone over 40, let me tell you, that's not exactly true. So I've been studying French seriously for the last almost 5 years now, even though I have a really long history with the French language going off and on and back and forth with my ability to speak and comprehend the language. It's only in the last 4 or 5 years that I've really been taking it seriously. When I study French, I'm not studying because I'm trying to pass an exam. I'm studying French because I want to be able to connect with people who are French speakers. Obviously, I want to connect because I love the culture, I love the music, I love the food, and I really want to be able to connect not just with people in France or in Belgium, but I also want to connect with Francophone Africa, and I also want to connect with the French Caribbean because I love their music, I love their food, and I love their culture. So I have to learn to speak their language. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory. I'm going to do another video about this at some point, but my story with French goes back to 2004, which was the first time that I stepped foot in a French language classroom back in college, and it was hard. I've wanted to learn French since I was about 7, 8 years old, and I didn't actually get an opportunity to study until I was finished with my Italian requirement in college, and I decided to take a French class to make up some credits. I've gone back and forth with French over the years, and it's only now that I'm really taking it seriously. I'm practicing every week. I'm practicing with my grammar. I'm practicing conversation with the best language partner in the world. Like, I feel bad for you guys because I have the best language partner ever. He's amazing. So I get to practice every week. I'm not fluent yet, and I've been getting better. My comprehension is sky high, which I'm very proud about because French used to just sound to me like a bunch of sounds. And I'm really proud about the progress that I've made. But I will admit something. Let me put down my tea for a second so we can really get into this. I've realized something, that a lot of the language advice that we get online as learners is really geared toward people who are in their 20s, or people who are just in college or out of college, people who are young. And I think once you're older, when you're over 30, or in my case, when you're over 40, a lot of us have different priorities in life. A lot of us have children. A lot of us are paying a mortgage. A lot of us have jobs that we are in management positions. We have family members that we may be caring for. Our lives just look different. We're in a different place in our lives. And what I've found over the years that I've been studying French and really taking it seriously, is that a lot of that advice does not really work for my life. And I've seen it for other people over 40 at the same time. A lot of stuff does not, a lot of the advice that goes out does not really work for those of us who are of a certain age. Now, that's no shade to the people who are giving this advice, because I'm sure it works for you. And my general rule about advice is that you take what you need and you leave the rest. But I wanted to create this video because I specifically want to talk to those of you who are like me, who are over 40 with busy lives, with a lot going on, but you're still trying to learn a language. So I want to tell you what I've done with the French language and how I've been able to manage having a busy life and a busy schedule with learning the language and improving. This is what works for me. This is what I've been able to do. This is what has helped me. I'm not trying to get a certification in French right now. I'm not trying to use the language for my job. I don't have an immediate need to achieve fluency. I'm not someone who wants to achieve fluency just for the sake of it. I'm literally learning the language because I like it, because I'm fulfilling a lifelong dream, because I like the music, because I like traveling to Paris on occasion, and I want to be able to communicate my needs, and I want to be able to connect with people who speak French. So, and the first thing that I have done over the last few years is, like I said earlier, I have a French partner, and I have an amazing French partner. And one thing that I was very adamant about when I was looking for someone to practice the language with was I wanted someone who was in my age group. So I found somebody who's also over 40, and it makes things a lot easier for me because there are some things that I just don't have to explain, some things that I don't have to justify. And we're kind of more or less in the same level, in the same place in life with one another. And so things are easy. Things are really simple. Two things to that. First, when I was looking for a language partner, I was very adamant that I wanted to connect with a Black French speaker. Man or woman didn't matter to me, but it did matter to me that I was speaking with another Black person because I didn't want to explain my culture. I didn't want to explain the things that didn't need to be explained. And I wanted to learn how to express my Blackness. I wanted to learn to express my own heritage with someone. And I wanted to learn those terms for it and not have it be awkward because not everybody wants to talk about race. But I think as Black people, we kind of have to, and we know how to talk about race. And that's kind of an element of the language process with French that I wanted to make easy for myself. And then I think the second part of that is that I have had partners who have been considerably younger than me. And I think there is value in that too. If you are someone who wants that, but I think if you're someone who wants to understand kind of the younger slang, if you want to understand what the current slang is and you want to practice like using them or hearing them organically, I think that's something that might work for you. It has its place for me, but I've found that the language partner, the steady language partner that I have, and the other people that I've had to practice with over the years, more or less have been my same age, and it's been such a relief to be able to communicate with someone my own age. Another thing that really works for me is Netflix. Now, we all have time for Netflix, and I think a lot of us who have families, a lot of us who are working full time, Netflix or any other streaming service tends to be a big part of your day, a part of your evening routine, I would say, or your commute. If you're in, if you take public transportation, maybe you're watching on your phone on your way to or from work. What I like to do specifically with Netflix, I'm saying, what I like to do is watch a show and then I'll rewatch a show maybe a couple of months later, but I'll switch the subtitles from English to French so that I can hear and I can see and I can read it at the same time. And then what ends up happening is I'll do that until I see a word or a phrase that I don't know. And then I'll pause it and I'll flip it back to English so then I can learn that word that I didn't know. Because even though my comprehension is a lot better, I know that sometimes at native speed, it can be really difficult to pick up, but I kind of play around with that, especially with Netflix. Let's be honest, it's not really a whole lot to watch these days like there used to be. So I tend to rewatch the same shows over and over, and I'll throw a French show in there from time to time. I already know what's going on in the plot. So, for example, like 10%, I've seen that maybe 4 times. I've seen Lupin maybe 5 times. So I'll just have the same thing on over and over again. And I'll just keep a running list of words that I'm learning while I'm watching these shows and rewatching these shows. So Netflix is your friend, but actually so is the library. And if you live in New York City, get yourself a library card if you don't already have it. There are tons of materials in many different languages. Since I'm studying French right now, there's tons of stuff in French, whether they're movies that you can download, or you can borrow on DVD from the library. I know that there's like Hoopla and Canopy. You can sign up for those and you can download movies from your local library via those platforms. They have so many non-English language films that you can download and you can use that to practice. I'm saying that because I don't want you to think that you have to go out or you're only relegated to what you can find um, on a streaming platform, and you can really be intentional about what you want to watch. And not to mention, there's tons of language books and CDs. Remember when we had those back in school? So if you still have your CD player from high school like I do, you can borrow CDs from the library and you can listen to those language CDs as well. And since we're listening to things, let's listen to music in French. But specifically, yeah, this is a tip that everyone's going to tell you, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you that's different and how I feel it's affected me that I'm over 40. So I love music from obviously from my childhood, from the 80s and 90s, because it was the best music. It was the best music. So think about what you loved about the music you listened to in the 80s and the music in the 90s. And then think about what it was like for people listening to music in France or in Congo or in Martinique, for example. If you haven't yet thought about it, listen to music from your favorite genre and your favorite era from back in the day in French. And I'm going to tell you why. Years ago, when I used to listen to RTL Paris every day at work on the radio, that's another tip for you. Because we're older and we have the attention span to listen to the radio. Listen to a French radio station while you're at work. But anyway, I used to listen to this station every day. And they used to play so much 80s music from France. I'm talking like Francis Cabrel and Jean-Jacques Goldman and Axel Bauer, et cetera, et cetera. And I love 80s music. I love 80s pop music. So a lot of these sounds are similar to what I've used to listen to in the US and what I grew up listening to. And it's really cool to listen to these songs, number one, because they're nostalgic, but also because they sing slower. And it's not like if you go and listen to a contemporary French pop artist, they might speak very quickly. There might be a lot of slang in there that you don't understand. But from what I've found from listening to artists from the 80s and 90s is that it's less. Another thing that I really love listening to is French hip hop. And I know there's a lot of French hip hop, contemporary French hip hop out there. My suggestion would be, if you're someone who's a fan of like the late 90s stuff, listen to any group that's coming out of Marseille around that time. Personally, I'm a huge fan of I.M, but there are other groups out there, and yeah, there's a lot of slang in there. There's a lot of hidden meaning in there. But honestly, specifically with I.M, I think they're so clear and their music is not only listenable, but their beats are nostalgic. So, you know, the beats that they sample are some of the biggest beats that we remember from our day back in high school, maybe even college. So you're getting that nostalgia factor and you're getting to listen to this rap music that's rapped pretty clearly. And I've learned so much vocabulary just from listening to them over and over, listening to them on repeat, and I'm one of their biggest fans. So that would be my tip to you. Listen to retro music rather than listening to the stuff that's contemporary. You need something that's spoken a lot more clearly and something that's spoken a little slower, and it helps. Plus, who doesn't love nostalgia? Another short thing that I do is I try to set about 30 minutes a day to grab my French grammar book and just do a couple of exercises. Now, if you're more tech savvy than I am, or if you're more, if you want to be more digital than I am, I like pencil and paper. But I take my French workbook and I set a timer for 30 minutes. And this is great because sometimes I can do this while I'm cooking dinner. You know, I've got something in the oven or I'm making a pot of rice or something. And I know that every day I have 30 minutes. So I have 30 minutes to just pencil and paper, do these exercises like I probably would do them when I was in school. And it's really helped me because, yes, it's frustrating because I don't know half of the things that I need to be knowing at this point. But honestly, it's really calming just to take 30 minutes and just chill and just get through one or two, maybe three exercises, depending on how much I understand and how much I don't. But just setting those 30 minutes a day, I think is reasonable because it's not setting me up for a long study session. I don't have time to sit for 3 hours a day. I don't have time to sit for an entire weekend and have a study session. So 30 minutes a day is really what works for me. And it helps me to at least feel a little bit accomplished rather than packing my schedule with too much stuff or making me feel like I have to block off a huge chunk of my day in order to get this done. And honestly, do the same for workouts because now that we're over 40, we have to stretch. Just saying. Okay, and speaking of cooking, one thing that I love to do is cook. Maybe you know that by now, but I love cooking. So I think if you are in a position where you have to cook, whether or not you love it or not, one thing that I've loved doing is cooking recipes in French. And how I find them, Googling them online. Because if you Google, French recipe online, you're going to get 10 recipes for like French onion soup, 3 recipes for like coq au vin or like a croissant recipe, and that's not what you need. So I Google recettes français pour dîner, for example, or les dîners, for example. So then it actually comes up in the French language. And then you can easily find 30-minute meals in French. You can easily find complicated meals if that's more your thing. You want to make something on a Sunday. But that's been a hack for me to kind of do these recipes in the French language. I'm learning so much vocabulary. A lot of it is specialized, but even within the recipe itself, you're seeing things like the different tenses of language that are used. And that is something, jot it down real quick if it's something that you don't understand and then tackle it later. But that's been really helpful for me. And I try to tell everyone to try that specific hack, that specific idea. And if you're cooking for your family, depending on what they like, there's a whole world out there of recipes that you can try. And I think they're not just going to be recipes that come out of France. I want to actually show you that I bought my first French language cookbook, and this one is from the French Caribbean. It's Acras and Coco, Chronique et Cuisine sous le soleil des Antilles. And there's so many great recipes in here that I'm waiting to try. I'm waiting to find some time to be able to try them. But if you have the budget, if you have the time, try to find a cookbook in French that you can go through it. You can figure out what the ingredients are and what the instructions are saying. And I think that this is my first French language cookbook, but it won't be my last because I love cooking. So I'm going to try to find a lot more recipes that I can cook from and help me deepen my knowledge of the French language. Another thing that I love is on Instagram, because I'm scrolling anyway, and I'm sure a lot of you probably do this, but just in case you haven't done this, I follow gossip websites, gossip Instagram accounts, the ones that give you celebrity news. And the reason why is because they're highlighting French celebrities or maybe Canadian celebrities and I don't know who these people are. I don't know who a lot of these people are. And I have no emotional attachment or connection to who these people are. So I can actually read the subtitles. I can actually read the text that's on the screen. And I'm not paying attention to, what did they do now? What did they do this time? Why are they in the news this time? I don't even know who you are. I don't know who this person is. But I also find that a lot of those sites, is training me to be able to read faster. Like a lot of people, I look at Instagram with my sound off. So I end up reading. And at first, when I was following these accounts, Allocine is one, Melty is another one. There are others. Netflix French FR is one. And I'm sure that there are others. If there are others and you know, drop them in the comments because I would love to follow. And also Al Jazeera has a French version. But it's taught me to read faster and try to catch up faster, because those videos are almost always captioned and you just have to you have to keep up. You have to keep up. So even if you're doing that, and I take any amount of French input during the day, any of it is a win for me. Because some days, like I said earlier, I don't have time to sit for hours and hours and hours. I have things to do, as I'm sure a lot of you watching this video do. I have things to do. So if my only contact with French for the day is just watching a handful of gossip blogs on Instagram, then that's what it's going to be. And you learn stuff too, because then you also start to learn who these people are. And, that's a part of cultural competency that you really can't find outside of a French speaking country otherwise. Another tip that I have is basically and I think we are in a great position being over 40 and starting to learn the language, because we know who we are at this point. We know what we like. We know what we want to do. We have interests at this point, and interests that we don't mind following. So I think what's really beautiful about it is taking something that you already love to do and just making it French. I've seen a lot of people tell me, oh, switch your phone to another language. And I've done that here and there, but ultimately it doesn't work for me, because you know what? If an emergency comes up, and I would imagine those of you who are parents, do you really want your child to call you with something going on and you're trying to fumble your way through the phone and you can't help them? Or your parent trying to, needing your help and not being able to help them because you switched your phone to another language, So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying it's a waste of time. I'm just saying there's other ways that you can get this kind of input. And one of the things that I think is really valuable is to lean on your interests. I have an interest in cooking, so that's where I will switch what I need to the French language. I'll find the French language recipes, as I said. We've gotten to a point in our lives where we know what we like. So if you are a whiskey drinker, you can read about whiskey in French. If you are a knitter or a crocheter, you can learn about crochet. You can find crochet instructions, patterns. You can find that in French, because they also knit in French speaking countries. If you like sewing, if you like basketball, if you like sports of any kind, if you like fashion, if you like beauty, whatever it is, I'm sure you can find it in a French language medium. And I would say indulge in that and give yourself an opportunity to not only learn and connect with something that you love, but also learn another language at the same time. And I think about what your routine is every day. If your routine is to read about, what happened in last night's NBA games, you can find that information in French. If you're working out and you're trying to get in shape, there are so many YouTubers who have their workouts in French. So just take a minute and think about what you're into. Even if it's your kids, what your kids are into, you can also do that kind of stuff in French. And so, beyond like reading the news and finding out what's going on in newsworthy, you can also lean into your interest in another language as well. I think another thing that I would say is, if you want to look at France itself, for French language content in order to learn the language, of course you can do that. But I just want to remind you that there are so many countries, somewhere like 24, if not more, French speaking countries around the world. And with that comes so much culture, not just food, but also music, style of dress, local news, etc. You can learn so much. You know, if you love Tahitian culture, they speak French in Tahiti. You can also learn how to dance Congolese rumba, or you can, you know, learn about Belgian soccer or whatever in the French language. And of course, it's all going to vary. It's all going to be different. I think for those of us in the US, I think, hello, our neighbors to the north are French speakers, and Canadian French is very different, probably, than what most people will learn in a classroom. Give it a try. You know, maybe it would be an interesting thing to learn about our neighbors, our Canadian neighbors. And the last thing I want to say is I just want to remind everyone watching this, all of us here who are over 40, don't forget that we know how to learn. We know how to learn. We know what our learning style is. We know what our management style is. We know how we learn new things on the job, at work. We know how to find things that interest us. We know how to conduct ourselves in an environment where we need to absorb information. So use that. Use that. Rely on that, because that is your power. That's your strength. That's something that will help you, honestly, with learning anything, but especially when learning a language. So, you know, if you got to the end of this video, you know that even if I said something that's not going to work for you, okay, well, you know something that might work for you, or maybe you can take part of what I said and make it work for you. You know, something that we have with our age, we can spot patterns. I think we know how to spot patterns. I think we know how to question methods that haven't worked for us before, and we know how to problem solve. So don't forget that. Do not forget that. Now, if you're also over 40 and you're studying a language, whether it's French or not, I'd love to hear what's been working for you. I'd love to share some ideas and hear some of how you've been able to progress and how you've been able to learn. And maybe I'll do a second video if enough people comment and there's, you know, some things that I want to share with the audience and I want more people to know about. But we got this. So don't let anyone tell you that it's too late to learn the language, because we're going to do it. Even if we do it at our own pace, it's going to get done, right? Okay. So now what I need for you to do is to subscribe to this channel and like this video. And if you are someone who loves language, culture, food from all over the world, make sure you're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast, because that's what we talk about over here. I really look forward to the next video. And until then, I can't wait to see you next time.